Hello, welcome back, everybody, to another year of the Sunday Podcast.
I'm Ollie Lum.
And I'm Matt Seddon.
Back in 2025 for our 5th season. You can expect more of this.
He's claiming that he was ill before the semi-final, whatever. But, you know, I just feel like at that point he was just looking for attention.
And some of this.
Elio normally say, no human is limited. So I can't limit myself, or I can't just say I can do.
As well as event coverage around all the major races on the UK circuit.
And if you're a fan of the pod, please give us a rating and review on your preferred podcast streaming service.
And if you want to stay up to date with all the latest news, give us a follow on Instagram at Sunday Podcast.
As always, thanks for listening. See you next time. And we hope you enjoyed the episode.
Okay, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Podcast, brought to you guys by sportsnews.com. As always, look, time to round up the race of the year. Liverpool Cross Challenge did not disappoint. As always, a few surprises in there, but we got to shout out Mr. Matty Sears. Obviously, in our preview episode, we talked about the algorithm. He was the creator, and he did predict himself Scott Beattie to win a senior men and Carrie Hughes to win a senior women as the ones to watch, despite not coming at the top of the algorithm. Him just looking at the data, they had super fast average race speeds across all of their events, and they also kind of picked or like positioned themselves pretty highly despite not hitting all the kind of event criteria. So I think we based it off 4 races, and they'd only done 3 eligible races out of the 4, and they still punched pretty high, which is why he said that, yeah, it was likely they would do pretty well, and he's absolutely smashed it, to be fair to him.
He has. He needs to start doing this for the World Championships and many other races out there as well. He can make people a lot of money. But you're right. Was it something to do with, obviously, their average pace was the quickest as well over the races?
Yeah, I think it wasn't the fastest though. I think he just gone through and like I said last week,
I'm pretty sure they were. He'd highlighted them on the spreadsheet as their average pace over X amount of cross country races was the quickest out of all the people in this on this spreadsheet.
Yeah, of course that does rely on the event distances being up to scratch and things like that. But yeah, that was one of the criteria. I think a lot of it was off, but it was that actually they were still in the high percentile despite only doing 3 of the 4 criteria. They must have done so well in the 3 that they did.
I picked out. I remember just looking at Beattie and seeing like 2:48 average speed for all of his past, whatever races, and that sounds pretty impressive to me. Yeah, whether it's accurate or not, who knows? But yeah, so credit to him. Credit to him, man. And credit to Scott and Carrie for getting the job done. I mean, the women's race was very close. Men's race, Scott did start to run away with that after a lap and a half. But yeah, women's race was a pack for ages, right to the wire, really.
Yeah, it was, mate. And I think obviously missing a few, I say a few big names, missing 2 big names. And interestingly, obviously Megan Keith chose to race elsewhere the day after. And look, I don't want to.
You've gone there already, mate. Yeah, we haven't even got to breaking the race down
from the people in the race, but I feel like, and that's the stature of someone like Megan Keith and even someone like Kate Axford, is that we've seen an incredible performance from Carrie Hughes, Poppy Tanks running her close as well, Izzy Fry on the podium, a fantastic top 3, but we've still got to talk about the athletes who weren't there because it is a story.
No, it is. I think rumours at Liverpool, Kate Axford is injured, maybe a stress fracture. So yeah, I don't expect. The team's not quite yet announced. Maybe it gets announced today. I mean, I think it will be announced on Wednesday. And so, yeah, I can't imagine she's going to be in that team. But yeah, Megan Keith, in order to go to Spain and race against Batacleti and a couple Kenyans, in order to let's do that race, she's been given a green light. She's been given, yep, you're a lock. You race Cardiff, impressed us enough. Obviously has a fantastic record on the track and cross country. And so, yeah, they've given her the green light. And it makes sense for Megan to go, like, I don't think there's anything against Megan to go into Spain and racing because, look, it was a very, very firm course. There's those little log jumps. I'm sure a lot of people would have seen it in Atapuerca or something. Anyway, it's a Spanish World Tour race. It's extremely firm, log jumps, twisty. And it's exactly what the course is going to be like. It's almost a carbon copy of what the course is going to be like in Portugal, or it's as close as she's going to get. So I could totally see why Megan's gone there. Plus she's raced Batacleti, who you're looking at someone who is probably going to win the European cross country quite comfortably. And so how can she match up against her? It's just a no-brainer for Megan, but my problem is with BA giving her the green light, saying, yeah, go do that, rather than saying, no, we want you at our British trial. We want you to sort of promote the event, put a statement down as well, and just race the best of the best. Because I think it's very unfair, because I'm sure Carrie Hughes, I'm sure Poppy Tank, I'm sure Izzy Fry, I'm sure all of those girls would have liked to go to Spain and simulate what the European cross, because unfortunately Liverpool was very, very different to what that course is going to be like in Portugal. And so they're now at a sort of a disadvantage in relation to what, in comparison to Megan's preparation.
Yeah, it's bullshit, isn't it? To be honest, like, completely get it. Like, if you have been given the green light, fine. This isn't on the athlete we're talking about now. We're nothing against Megan Keith. That is a better preparation race to do. But I guess the long and short of it is she shouldn't have been given the green light, because, and it shouldn't matter who comes 5th and 6th and 7th even. But actually, if you look at today, on Saturday, Abby Donnelly, Verity Ockenden, and Jess Gibbon as your 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's not like we're talking about taking people out of the team now who are, look, realistically not gonna punch well. These are 3 of our like top
10 finishers on their day. They're top 10 finishers in European cross.
So it is, and it shouldn't matter. You like, look, Sarah Aston in 8th place, Lucy Jones in 9th place. High caliber athletes. It's not like we're talking about an event where we're starved of talent.
I agree. I think it makes a mockery. Also, it's almost just sneaky. It's just classic BA. It's sneaky. The fact that, this wasn't announced pre-Liverpool. And obviously there's no way they could have announced that, oh, hey, by the way, guys, Keith is not going to race Liverpool. She's going to go and prepare for the European cross in Spain. Right. Yeah. So, that would have caused uproar. And, and I know this would have pissed a lot of athletes off. I mean, look, Donnelly's bounced off of a marathon where she ran one of the best marathons we've seen this year. And she's been, trying to recover the best she can. No doubt she was heavy legs. She puts herself on the line. She comes 5th. You just know she wouldn't have been feeling amazing, but she's got out there and she's run the trial because, that is that's what BA say you have to do. So, yeah, I just think it's a bit of a shame, and that kind of, it was kind of a bit, ended up being a bigger story than celebrating those top 4 to 6.
Yeah. It's just stupid, isn't it? Well, you say they couldn't announce it before, but on the track, that's exactly what they do. Like Kerr says, I've been given the green light, I'm going to run the 5K. True, and it should be no different. Yeah. Like, if that's the call you're going to make, you need to, like, back it. They need to, like, take some responsibility and say, no, Megan is so far ahead and cut above the rest, right? We back her that she's going to make this team no matter what, so we're going to give her the opportunity to do this, and she's earned that. But back that and say that and come out and say that, like you say, it's shady, and it's... Look, we'll say this, and then she won't end up in the team now, and it won't have worked. But look, I don't see that happening. She
will be in a team.
Yeah, exactly. But like, yeah, if that's how you feel, look, they are the expert in this example. They should be the expert, so they make that call. But you're transparent about it. You announce it. You tell the other athletes that's what's going on. None of this cloak and dagger stuff. It's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm. Look, 2023, Megan Keith won the trial by a minute. I think her winning margin was about a minute. And, she then went and won, given she was only an under 23 that year, she then went and won the under 23s by the biggest winning margin that the European cross has ever seen. Obviously, it was in Brussels. It was extremely muddy. But, is the race in Spain going to make that much of a difference? Maybe. But like you said, there was still some really, really good women at Liverpool Cross that she could have focused on putting away.
The pressure for her now. So, if one of these girls beats her at Euros,
well, probably Tang won't fall behind at Cardiff. I think that's the thing for me as well. If Megan raced Cardiff and was streaks ahead, like in 2023, she won the Cardiff Cross, right? If she was streaks ahead, then it's kind of like, okay, yeah, logical. Go to Spain, but she wasn't a million miles ahead of the likes of Tank and stuff. But I guess nothing against Megan Keith. She's been allowed to do that, and that will prepare her probably better for the European cross than it, maybe just a little bit, but than Liverpool. But just a shame that those women didn't get a chance to race her. Carrie Hughes, Poppy Tank, Izzy Fry, and the rest of them, Phoebe Anderson, Abby Donnelly. So there you have it on that one. But there's been a lot of people have been saying, I'm on an email chain, but there's a lot of feedback going into that event on the weekend, the Liverpool Cross on the weekend and the trial. And, one of the things were the lapped runners were hideous. I'm all for, mass races. I really am. And at Cardiff Cross, it's actually not that much of a big deal. The laps are big enough, and I don't think the field is as dense. It's quite wide in parts, and they seem to only start weaving through people sort of on the last half a lap anyway. But it was so bad, and I actually think it affects the race. I think if you're sort of shooting for that fourth, fifth, and sixth position, maybe typically a couple get away, and then there's it's all on. The race is on for fourth to sixth, for that sort of fourth to top 10. But the problem was, even if you had a 5-second gap on someone, they couldn't even see you. There were so many athletes and so many lap runners, and you were having to push and shove your way through. So the lap runners were a serious problem. But another thing, people are moaning about the course, saying the lap runners ruin the course and they churn it up. And they're saying Liverpool needs to be run over better ground, basically saying, it's too muddy. The course needs to be perfect. It needs to be like an NCAA. And I completely disagree with that, because I appreciate this year the European Cross is in Portugal and it's on a bloody, compact gravel track. But in Brussels, it was a bog in 2023. And in fact, in Liverpool, it was dry that year. And we sent a senior men's team who seriously underperformed in Brussels because it was so bloody boggy. You remember that? Except for Hugo Milner. And then, and so you can never predict what the course is going to be like. Maybe you have some understanding, but then in Dublin, it was muddy, it was boggy, it was very, very soft. Again, we struggled. It was pretty firm that year at Liverpool. And then I remember 2018 in the Netherlands, it was very muddy again. So I think this whole Liverpool, we can't have the trial on a muddy course anymore. It needs to be this perfect grass. It's just, for me, that just is bullshit, because I appreciate some years European cross is firm, Turkey and Portugal, but then there's some where it's traditional cross country and it can be dry at Liverpool and it can be the polar opposite of what it is when you get to the European. So I think unless you literally design a course every year to accommodate the European cross, I think you may as well keep it at Liverpool.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. You're bang on, and unless you move it around each year. But the event now has got so much history, and so is the course, and just get over it. Just go and race. Just get on with it.
It wasn't even that muddy on the weekend. It was muddy, but it wasn't.
Just go and make sure you win. Do you know what I mean? Just prep for the race itself. Everyone knows exactly what it's going to be like. It's the same every year. Go and prep for it. Get yourself in the top 6, and then go from there. That's like being well, we have to, in terms of our 5K British champs, we need to get pacers in who run it at the same pace that the Olympics goes off at, so that it's a realistic race. Because otherwise we'll have them running 14 minutes and winning with a kick, and that's not going to help them at the Olympics. It's we're not going to do that, are we? No. So, we need to pack the stadium so there's some noise in there rather than it being empty and windy. Well, we're not going to do that either. So it's just a race. It's a trial, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and Liverpool, because obviously, there is a lot of feedback this year around Liverpool, and I think more than ever. But I've never understood why they felt the need to shorten the laps from what were the laps previously, 3K, and now they're they basically just took out that large snaky section. So when it comes to underfoot, the bigger the lap, the less it gets sort of trashed, basically, because there's just more space on the course and less people throughout the day run on different sections of the course as well. So I never understood why they took out that snaky section. And also that would have helped with the lap running as well. It's baffling. So there's just it's funny, with BA, I'm just just use your common sense. You are piggybacking off of a
I don't know who makes these decisions. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know who makes it. It's just common sense, man.
In terms of putting a cross-country course together.
Yeah.
Well, we're sat here doing it. There's probably 1,000 people listening who are well, I could make that course pretty smart and sensible.
Mate, I think honestly,
it's not difficult.
All they needed to do, right, is have exactly the same course, make the laps a little bigger, have that snaky section in there, right? Exactly the same course. And then, do you know what? On the second lap, senior men or senior women, whatever, just file into this little next lane. And so you are basically, you're not having to deal with any lap runners. That's it. On the last lap, just file them into another lane, just that's all. But I guess that takes a little bit more organization, couple more officials. it wouldn't have been that complicated, because the only races it is a problem is obviously just the senior races. It's the only time it's a problem. And so there's 2 senior races where you just need to layer on a few more officials and just have a little extra lane next to.
Well, like you say, in those races, just have a big lap
or get creative with the course. I mean, I never forget when we did the National Cross at it's National Cross at Woolwich Park. You know, when was it? Maybe 2017, or when was it next? Or 2017. Anyway, it was 5 laps. You did a extra small lap, you did a small lap, you did a medium lap, you did a large lap, you did an extra large lap. And it was and so it meant the lap running was way, way better, because, you know, they're still mucking around on their medium lap by the time you're on your extra large. You know, and there were some small points where there was a bit of crossover with the lap runners, but there was quite a lot of moments where the leaders would be on fresh ground. And also it spread the footfall, so everyone wasn't just churning up the same lap. So I wonder if they can be a bit more creative, but it is not hard to sort of plan that so you avoid lap runners and focus on the point. Yeah, because unfortunately it was bad. Like on the last lap, you couldn't even see. It's like, well, where are the leaders? Like, are they coming? What's going on? And I think that's a real shame. An event where everyone is so fixated on that top 6, there were points where you're like, where's Scott Beattie? You know, where are these lead women? You know, just no idea. And then it's just like, oh, here they are.
Yeah. Should we speak about those leading men then? Let's stop moaning and get into and Roy.
Should we? I guess, yeah. I mean, let's just finish up with this women's race, actually, because obviously, yeah, Hughes, Tank, Fry. I think 3 names that I can't even remember what our predictions were, man. But
yeah, they were in there.
I think they were as well. Phoebe Anderson ran well. She did quite a lot of the early running. I mean, it's just an exceptionally strong team. And I think that team will basically be those 4, Abby Donnelly, and then Megan Keith. I think that'll be your team.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, that's a gold medal winning team. These are all women. And actually, yeah, mate, they're all, like, they've all been to Eurocross before. No one hasn't been to Eurocross. And so, yeah,
that's what I mean.
Experienced returners.
The ladies who are going to miss out, like your Verity Ockendens, Jess Gibbon, top athletes are going to miss out because of Megan Keith coming back.
Spread between 1st and 6th, 25 seconds. That's a small spread between 1st and 6th. Shows you how deep it was, mate. And by the way, the under-23s, I mean, that's another conversation. A lot of people obviously don't like the fact that the under-23s are in the same race as the seniors and peel off after a lap.
Yeah, everyone knew that was an issue before they even did it last year, and I can't believe they've done it one year and then decided to just carry on as well.
I feel like it was bad this year, though. And I just feel like that maybe there was more under-23s, or I think there's more under-23s who thought, I've just got to get after it. I've just got to go with the seniors. Whereas I think last year they might have still been a bit like, didn't quite know where to position themselves. And I think a lot of them just learned that you just need to go off as hard as you can with the seniors and just sort of hang there. But Megan Harris looked very good. And actually, she sort of took the lead in the senior race over the last 5-6. And so she was actually, when she turned off the leading, kicking
as
on.
They should, to be fair.
Yeah. They're doing a lap less.
Like, as they should. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
I
was quite surprised, to be fair. I was quite surprised.
It's not even, isn't it?
But I think the women were being quite tactical.
On the 23s, but like, look, all our best athletes were like world class when they were under.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you know, sort of going back a few years, but the under 23s would win the overall trial, right? I mean, in Estonia, gets second a couple of years back, and
I just mean in general, like, even if like you look at the track, like, it's not long since Keeley was under 23.
It's for sure. It's exceptionally deep age.
I don't.
Exceptionally deep age group. But, and I think the women were obviously, they were quite tactical. They were a large bunch for quite a long time. I don't think anyone, you know, they were all so good that I don't think anyone wanted to like stretch things out too early and set themselves up. But, whereas obviously the men's race, polar opposite. But yeah, on that under 23 team, Harris, Parker, Waldman, Barwell, Flaherty and B Wood, they were your top 6. And contrast to the senior women, there's big 40 seconds basically between 1st and 6th, and that kind of shows you like who is able to run with that lead pack of the senior women's, and then versus the rest of them. But I think what it did do the under 23s, it certainly affected positions probably 6th to 20th in the senior races, because
just in terms of getting in the way.
Yeah, getting in the
already
way.
realize where they're at, and
Bang on, man. I think getting in the way is one argument. I think because the problem is you're a lap and a half into Liverpool, right? And then you've got under 23s who are just like all over the place, lactic, kicking, and I think it's probably quite difficult to cope with and a bit frustrating. And then you think you're running with people. I think this happened to a lot of seniors. You think you're running with people and then they all pull off. And then you find yourself on your own. And, and you might have been, if the under 23s weren't in the race, you probably wouldn't have let those gaps open, and you might have been a bit strategic where you positioned yourself in terms of who you were running with. But, it's very difficult to be like, oh, they've got a yellow number. I better not run with them. I'll run with someone, with a white number or whatever. So I don't think
beneficial for the top 23s because it's not beneficial for like if you're 8th place 23 because it's so much easier for you to like lose the people in front of you because they just like merge crowd or they manage to like
100%.
If you make a move and you like latch onto some seniors who are moving well, you can just be absolutely away. Whereas if that's a real race, you got to go out there on your own and battle the wind and mentally, etc., etc., etc.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
really help anyone except like the top 2 under 23s. Maybe it might help them.
Agreed, and it doesn't prepare the under 23s for Liverpool for the European cross either, because it's like you use the track example. It's like doing a 5,000 meter trial and saying, "Yeah, we're going to have a pacemaker run." These women are 15:30 runners. We're
we'll do the under 23 3K trials at the same time as the 5K for the seniors,
or just say we're going to have a pacemaker run 72. It's like. And see who can keep up. And I think, that's the problem, because if those seniors aren't in the race, I still think looking at these women's results, I don't think much changes actually on that sort of.
I think that's
mate. The issue, right? Their form tells me that not much has changed.
No.
It does. But all I'm saying is there would be a bit more strategy, and there would obviously be
exactly, and that's what I mean, and that's why we run the race, right? We always say this. That's why we run the race, is so we know, because. Yeah, you can predict it, and it might be like fairly close to the form book, but it doesn't give people a fair chance.
I just think though, I talk about that spread being 40 seconds in that under 23 women's race between first and sixth. That spread for me, if it was a race, would probably be a lot smaller, because would Megan Harris have and stuff gone with that? They might have just pinged off the front, and fair enough. But it's like David Stone last year as well. He was able to just break away in that mud, and that was it. No one could. Barnico was left way behind. But then what happened at Euros? When it comes to a race, and it was a much drier course, right? But Barnico, left Stone for dust, and left everyone else for dust. Anyway, talking about Barnico, he wasn't in the men's under 23. So they're your senior races, and they're your complaints from us around Liverpool and how it's set up. But I think, the event's got loads of history. It's the best race of the year, as we always say. And I would hate to see it move away from Liverpool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's so simple. You just make a couple easy changes and you're making everyone happy again. But they might overcomplicate it and try and do something completely new and, host it somewhere else and have all of about 50 people turn up. So, because the crowd and stuff were amazing, the atmosphere is amazing.
Yeah, mate. Let's get into the senior men. We haven't even gone there yet. You mentioned, I guess, the spread. Only 40 seconds between the 6 in the senior man, which over that distance, not too bad, but obviously not as tight as the women. Scott Beattie, Rory Leonard, the team of Cowboys up at the front. Pretty dominant display from those two. Particularly Beattie, of course.
Yeah, and the reason I'm talking about the spread is because doing a bit of homework pre the event, I was like, what does it take to make this team? And when you go back in the last 6 years on the men's side, what was it? 39 seconds this weekend or something? 39 seconds between first and sixth this weekend. Last year, 41 seconds. Year before that, 34. Year before that, 35. Year before that, 38. Year before that, 2019, that is 41 seconds. So the last 6 years, you've got an average of like that spread is so strange, is basically always the same. It's always about 40 seconds between first and first and sixth.
And the race distance has changed as well, so that is actually interesting, because it's only this year and last year that it's been shorter. I'm surprised it stayed the same.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Scott and Rory, fair play. I mean, Rory really slapped that first lap. And in Scott, and yeah, I guess credit to them, sort of took me, well, definitely, I think potentially took a few people by surprise. But then, when it plays out, you're like, well, fair play. They did show their class a lot on the course on Saturday. And Rory obviously just hitting that first lap, and then Scott coming through. It was weird how Rory waved him through. I think he was hoping that they would share the pace and sort of, continue to work together, but Scott wasn't having any of that. He was off. I think potentially, Scott ran very well on the mud last year. I know Rory was ill last year, right? But I think potentially Scott just moving through the ground a little bit better, and just thought, when you get in a groove, when you get in a rhythm on that sort of course, you just don't really want to slow down or step out of it. And so, he may as well just held it, and he did do that, and he just poured it on. It was dominant, really dominant. And I think as well, Rory sort of, once that gap opened, just had to finish the job himself. So potentially wasn't fighting as hard. But, Rory, I think the advantage those boys have is, like, last year, they got themselves in a very, very good place for, obviously Scott didn't race, but at the Euros, but they got themselves in a very, very good place for Eurocross. So if they are following that same path, then, they're in it with Eurocross being in 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks as well. They're probably going to perform very well. And this was kind of the start of their campaign.
Yeah, and mate, they've come good when it counts, because look, there's no denying the quality of the two of them. Obviously, Rory's 10K that he ran at the start of the year on the road, Scott's 5K indoors, but we've seen a few, like, I guess, weaknesses in recent months, in recent weeks, with obviously Roy Leonard struggled in half. Scott Beattie didn't really feel like giving the summer track season a go. But when it's come down to it, and come down to the big one, like we say, Liverpool, huge race, they've delivered. And yeah, fair play to the guys, and good to see them back to the top of their game going into Europeans, and where they've got a chance to really punch high. Mate, we got to chat about third place. Thoughts on Slady Boy? Never in doubt?
Well, when we did our prediction, I think three of the people that I sort of had to do a job was Callum Johnson and the two Mohammeds, right? Zach Mohammed and Mohammed.
Yeah,
and three of those didn't turn up. So, I think when you realise that they weren't going to be there, and it was very good, and he's been improving every race. So I think we made sure he got to the start, 110% and ready to rock and roll. So obviously conditions were soft and muddy underfoot. So, but I was impressed, to be honest, from a coaching perspective. His decision making during the race, that's something you can't, it's very difficult to predict and plan for. You just don't know how the race is going to map out, and his decision making was just second to none on the day, and that's just what allowed him to just pull away just ever so slightly from the boys in 4th, 5th and 6th and get that third place wrapped up.
Yeah, mate, you talk about our predictions. Some interesting comments on our post. Don't think people read the caption that those were the generated results rather than our picks. But a few people weren't too happy.
Well, on the podcast, we probably did make some shocking picks as well, to be fair.
Oh, I don't know about that, mate. It's all opinion.
I mean, I personally didn't. I'll confess
we
now.
both said Scott and Rory weren't going to make the team.
Yeah. I wonder how that race would have planned out had we had the likes of a Zach Mohammed or Mohammed. And I think whenever you see those names on a start list, you do sort of, especially Mohammed, you do think, okay, this is going to be a hard. It would have been an interesting battle between Scott and Rory, basically. And
yeah.
If that panned out, but we haven't seen anything from him from a long time, and it was just it was a bit of a curveball, and he got people talking, and they're probably laughing about it.
Yeah, obviously in terms of kind of wrapping up the other results, obviously the informed man Jacob Can, 4th place, cements his spot after a stellar season, which is hard to do. I feel like the guy who comes in having run really well at Mansfield, really well at Cardiff Cross, more often than not, they fuck it on the day. And he hasn't done that. So well done to him, because I think it's very difficult to go into that race as, I think it's different if you're a Roy Leonard and by that I mean someone who's kind of done it before and done well at Euros before, who then is super good at Mansfield, is super good at Cardiff Cross, but there's always one who's kind of looks like they're coming out the woodwork, and this is going to be their year, and it's really difficult to then come through. So yeah, I think he's done a great job. Joe Hudson comes 5th, Logan Reese in 6th. Look, do we think Zach Mohammed is going to come in for either of those boys, or even Mohammed, right, for the Europeans?
Well, if they were both ill, fair enough. But I think they have, no grounds to. I just think, look, they're great runners, but when you haven't run as long as Mohammed's run for, I think there's no proving of form. Like
I'm not asking if you think that. I'm asking if you think that's what will happen. As in, I think we both have the same opinion on we wouldn't put either of them in.
No, I won't.
But we don't. Yeah. Okay.
I don't think it will happen. I think BA would have had to see in this selection policy. It does actually say you need to have proven form between.
Is that Mohammed ranked?
I think
just like Megan Keith.
Zach Mohammed did, yeah, but I'm talking about Mohammed. You need to have proven form. Right, yeah. I think even for maybe it says September on that selection policy. You need to have proven form from September to now, basically. So over the last couple of months. So I don't think Zach Mohammed possibly, but you got three men there. Slade Can and Hudson. There's 3 debuts on the GB team. Huge. Yeah. So quite a contrast from that women's team. And Kingston, it was a funny race at Liverpool. I think, it went off hard. Rory blew it open. Kavanagh sort of tried to give chase. Maybe a bit naive, hasn't done a cross country of that stature. I know he's been tearing up those Surrey leagues, but those Surrey leagues have been short. They won the other week. It was like 20 minutes of running, which I guess Liverpool isn't much longer than that, but they've also been dry and you also haven't had the caliber to worry about behind you. So if you go off a little bit too hard,
it's near on a mile back off, though, isn't it? So it's not.
Yeah. So I was surprised that he went to give chase, especially having not run Liverpool before and not been in a race of that stature, but he did and he paid the price. And then you had, alongside a couple of under 23s, Ramson and Doy, who, huge from him to make the team. You had a pack of 4 or 5 who just sort of worked together after Scott gave chase and, those 2 Macau boys were away and gone. And then just over the course of the next sort of lap and a half, that group got smaller and smaller. The under 23s peeled off and it was a case of just picking your moment and when to force and, Slade Can and Hudson, to be fair to him, sort of wasn't in that pack and bridged the gap and came back onto them or tried to, close that gap, never quite got on there. But yeah, Slade and Can did well to sort of work together and pull themselves clear because you did have Hudson, Reese, Kingston, Dempsey, because Cam Allen dropped back. But those boys were coming from a lot further back and they left themselves. And this is where the lap runners, I feel, did play a bit of a part in the race, because had there been no lap runners and no under 23s as well, someone like Kingston who tried to sort of play the game of going off a little slower and working through the field, which we know at Liverpool is a popular tactic. It works for that sort of 5th, 6th spot. It usually works. And even Logan Reese, like those guys, the problem was he actually couldn't get sight on Slade and Can and that group with Cam Allen and those boys, that basically that chase group where they were changing 3rd, 4th and 5th. And so he couldn't get sight when the under 23s were in the race. And then as soon as they dropped out, you had lap runners. And so those gaps, those distances, you just didn't know what you were working with. And that's a very difficult place to be in a cross country race like Liverpool.
Yeah, and the weaving in and out as well.
Mate, there were scenarios where boys were literally, splitting some joggers. They were having to split them in half. And, you had, mate, Rory Leonard ran past me and he's literally shouting at the top of his lungs, move out the way.
Yeah.
Like, on the last lap.
Which they shouldn't be having to do.
No way. And, it worked out, right? It worked out. Beattie and Leonard were clear but it's so, even those boys from, Slade, Can, Hudson, Reese, Kings, basically the whole top 10, the whole top 15 just shouldn't, that's where it really, every second counts and you should not be having to deal with that sort of caper.
Well, no, yeah, Kingston's only 2 seconds behind 6th place, right? And you just don't know how many times he had to weave or shout or whatever it was or lose his rhythm, and it can be the difference between making a GB team or not. So
BA have failed them. Anyway, mate. Yeah, you see a couple standouts, mate. So I think Dempsey, big run from him, 8th, and yeah, it was very, very close for that sort of 6th spot. You think Hudson and Reese, same time, 24:29, Kingston 24:31, Dempsey 24:38, Cam Allen a little further back, 24:48, and then the gaps, opened, and there's sort of that 5-10 second gap between athletes a little bit further down the field there. But hey, look, it was a spectacle. And I think the senior men's race threw up a few surprises. I'm not sure no one predicted that top 6. But I guess, we speak about Megan Keith coming in the women's race, potentially Zach Mohammed. I think who is going to be that possibly 5th, that possibly 6th spot. You know, will they go with Hudson? But this is what doesn't sit right with me, because 5th and 6th are discretionary spots. Joe Hudson runs 24:29. Logan Reese runs 24:29. They run the same time. There's less than a second between them over 8 kilometers around Liverpool. The chances are Hudson might be safe. Logan Reese won't be. The chances are someone comes in, you know, for Logan Reese. And how can BA justify that?
Yeah.
When these two have run exactly the same, like it just does, you know, this discretionary caper, man. It's just like, what? And, you know, if the Mohammeds were ill, you know, Callum Johnson's got a bit of a niggle or something, or wasn't quite right, you know, if people can't be in shape 3 weeks before, then just leave it at that.
Yeah. And that's what we rated about Leonard last year, right? Is he did it ill.
Yeah. I think if you're good enough, you'll do it. Yeah,
exactly.
If you're good enough, you'll do it, and you'll make the team. And if you don't make the team, then hard luck. You know, you go again and you learn for the next. Kingston was ill last year.
The sorts of people who they should be considering as discretionary spots should be good enough to make it regardless. They should be that good.
Yeah, I think those discretionary.
They should be nowhere near a discretionary spot anyway.
Look, for me, the discretionary spot, obviously Megan Keith, but you know, on the men's side, the discretionary spot is for me would only be if the likes of
Megan Keith, mate. I think it. Looking at the caliber of girls that she's going to knock out. Look, I'm not saying she wouldn't beat them. I still think it's ridiculous, though.
Yeah. We'll disagree on that. But, you know, for me on the men's side, it's like Emil, Paddy Diva, boys who have, you know, because Paddy Diva, what'd he come? 20? He's been our highest world cross finisher for a long time. Where'd he come in? Was it Aarhus or the one after that? 25th or something, maybe? That was when he was young as well. But, you know, people who have shown that class on a world level were probably the only people that, you know, I would, and a class over the country, you know, and Emil and Paddy both have. Even if George Mills wanted a spot, like, I think he'd have to do Liverpool to show his form. Love to see Mills over the country.
Oh, he'd end up fighting someone, wouldn't he?
Think about him on that last lap, mate.
Round in the corner. It'd be a big bust up, yeah.
Those lap runners wouldn't stand a bloody chance.
No.
Under 23s then, and again, very, very similar scenario to the women's race. You had Matt Ramsden and Joel Doyle. Like, you know, that to me was a surprise. You know, but they got on it. They were positive. They were aggressive. They got after it, and you know, they just pulled themselves clear. Sam Hodgson, Finn Profit, Jensen Connell, and Ollie Conway crowning out that top 6, and they'll have to wait. But the under 23s was very, 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 very close. So when you look at the difference between fourth and 10th, 4th and 8th, sorry, it was kind of like, what, 10 seconds? Yeah, there was a lot of packs of men in that under 23 race.
Always is, isn't it? And I think, yeah, it's a weird age group, like I said earlier, in that more often than not, like, you expect them to be ready to go and compete with the best of the seniors. But now, the way the races run these days, we'll just never know. We don't really know how they stack up against the seniors. And I think it's detrimental to the age group, because previously it was like you might come 5th overall, but be first under 23. And then we know you're going to go and have a good chance of medaling at Europeans. Whereas now that you're not tested in that way.
You know, the under 23s as well, being just over 5K, it's running for 16 minutes. I mean, is that, and this isn't British Athletics' fault. This is the European cross country shortening the race to 5 and a bit K. But you've got George Cootie in the NCAAs running 28:30 or 28:40 for 10K, coming 10th against people who can run 27 minutes. You know, and this is a 1500 guy running 10K. Are you setting these men up for because that is niche. 5.5K cross country as an under 23 is niche, you know, like rogue distance to train for. You know, I guess Mansfield is a perfect preparation for them. But, you know, a lot of these men will have aspirations of running running 10K. I guess it does appeal to the 1500 guys. You know, I think when it comes to, I think all you're doing is low-key slowing down that transition a little bit between into the senior ranks, because you've now made this cross race so short. Whereas before, you know, yeah, you're right. You had boys coming. Estonia was the most recent one before they changed it, right? He beat Leonard and Jack Rowe possibly for second behind when Hugo Milner just dominated. I was in 23. And you're right. You know, you could see how they matched up against the seniors. You're like, well, they're going to have a bloody good race at Euros.
Yeah.
That being said, these boys are in shape. Ramsden ran well at Mansfield. He's looking good. He's had a good cross campaign so far, and so credit to him for getting the job done on the day.
Yeah, mate, I think that pretty much wraps us up. I guess the only thing we wanted to mention, obviously you mentioned the NCAAs just then and Kuti, but the number of Kenyan athletes dominating the NCAA cross country.
Don't quote me on this. What did Jonathan Galt say? I might need to find his tweet, but basically, out of top 40s All American in the NCAAs, I think 23 were Kenyan. It was basically at least half were Kenyan. So, but George Kuti coming 10th is just huge. The guy, I mean, by the way, Tamer, who won Liverpool last year, 70. Brett Rushman was somewhere around there, I think. Yeah, there's quite a few Brits out there who are sort of in the hundreds. And Tamer sort of was a notable Brit who was in the 70s there, and it just shows you the depth. I mean, and that's the thing. Kuti ran 28:40 for 10K. I mean, I saw a stat. Apparently, there was an Oregon lad closed his last K in 2:43. It was the fastest last K out of all the All-American finishers. Like 2:43 his last K. What is that? 30? That's about 13:30 pace for 5K.
And that's why you don't blame him for celebrating being an All-American.
It's a huge.
That's why you don't blame him for celebrating top 40, because it is massive. To come top 40 is unbelievable.
So, but yeah, I guess Kuti was definitely the man who impressed in the NCAA. For me, Tia Wilson on the women's side was first Brit home, 22nd. Mina Scatchard, 44th. Those two featuring pretty high up in, again, what is just stacked fields. So, but yeah, I guess one of the stories of the NCAA is not only there were so many Kenyans, but also the corner cutting. And we're here saying Liverpool need to do X, Y, and Z, but I've always wondered why the NCAA, they just paint these white lines on the ground and just assume that everyone is just going to run within these white lines. And obviously, a lot of people will, but let's be honest. There's these long, honestly, when you watch the video, they do quite a lot of aerial shots, and you're just watching it. There's these massive sweeping turns, and you've just got geezers just cutting the whole turn off on the inside. And I'm like, and at first you're like, oh, that's fans. That must be fans just like cheering them on, running alongside them, cheering them on. It's not. And then they pan the close up. It's like a couple lads from Alabama just have literally chopped off close for the length of that turn, close to 50 meters. They've just, and then they find themselves in the front group. They're like back in the second group, and then they're in the front pack. So they've got their own problems. I don't know why they don't tape it. I don't know why they've never just sort of taped that whole course. What is it, 3K a lap? Just tape the whole course.
Reminds me of an old Horsepath Chiltern League, mate, where you got geezers stepping onto the road, stomping about in their super shoes.
Mate, that was last week. Mate, that was literally last week. I was there. Horsepath Chiltern League. And that road section. Yeah. If it's dry enough, you put your Vaporflies on and you can hammer down the road. Meanwhile, everyone else is flapping about on some ankle breaking grass. Yeah, in the box. But yeah, so I guess they've got their own problems, and that was one of the stories coming out of the NCAAs. And of course, those Kenyans, Ed Eyestone and a few other coaches going back and forth on, I mean, where do you sit? Where do you sit, mate, on like the sort of international recruiting? Because, my argument is, a lot of schools, like because they're Kenyan, I don't think that's
exactly.
That's I mean, how many Brits are over? I think they had 10 or 12 Brits in the NCAA cross race.
That's it. Like, there's no like hierarchy in terms of like, it's okay to recruit from this country and not okay to recruit from that one. And to make that argument is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how it's changed.
The only way they solve it if they just say this is just
maybe like
no international recruits.
Age cap perhaps, but again, it's university sport, and
or they limit internationals per
as
roster.
The world changes. Like, seen it in Bucks over the years. As the world changes, like more and more people start going to university at an older age again, and it's not, you don't have to be 18 to 21 to go to uni. So if you're gonna you gotta let people represent their university. Like, obviously, mate, from Oxford, like the amount of guys you'll have on postgrads, no one's gonna be like, oh, they can't do Bucks because they're 28. And so it's not a pro league. And I know with the NCAA, there's a lot of money involved, but at the end of the day, it's university sport. And if you're at a university, then you're eligible. I think the only issue is if there's like these like back alley deals going on, where it's like, and we know there's a bit where it's like, oh yeah, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Here's a pot of money that's going to like an agent or whatever, and then like send me some athletes, rather than people who are like I guess, genuinely going to study and to train and be a student athlete. But
there's two recruitment companies who are responsible for over 150 Kenyan athletes in the NCAA. Two companies. They've and it's almost like a even split.
Subsidiary of Mike Rosa, probably. It's a shell company.
But it's it's just crazy. But you can understand why the coaches do it. But I guess
they're just playing with the tools they have, right? They're employed they're paid big money to win championships. So you're like, okay, my recruit money comes in. What can I get value for money? Oh, I can recruit from here, here, here. This is the team I'm going to piece together, and that's how I'm going to try and win NCAAs, because that's my job as a coach and as a recruiter. So you can't really blame them. It's different if you're like, you're not allowed to recruit. You have to make whoever comes to your university naturally like as good as you can, and that's your job as a coach. But no, recruitment's part of it. Transfers are part of it. So that's just the game. Look, interesting. I think one of the biggest, when we spoke to Gary Martin, and he was like, well, the way he sees it, all it does is make the competition better, and that makes him better. Mm-hmm. He's like, because the thing is, the top guys in there want to go and be world-class athletes when they finish college. So there's no point in being like, we close off to everyone.
I don't think it affects the real sharp end. I mean, you look at who got second. You had a freshman on the girls' side, Jane Hennigan, and you have Rocky Hansen, true American on the men's side, and like the last 2 years, Graham Blanks has won it. And I think, you see Cootie coming 10th, Gary Martin coming 7th. I don't think it affects the real pointy end. I think, unfortunately, you've probably got a lot of athletes who could be good, who potentially could be missing out. They are, but and you're probably looking at those who are around those All-American spots who are, who are missing out.
I think that's it. And it's people might miss out on scholarships in the future, where before, like, maybe you could go to college and get a full ride, maybe if like you weren't of a standard in your first year that's going to go and compete. Whereas now, I think you made the comment before that you're not going to get the chance to go there with potential. You're going to have to be ready made. But if it means we keep more students over here and Bucks become stronger, then I'm all for that. So
gotcha.
So
definitely all for that. So NCAA cross, always a good watch. I think the US track and field champs are this weekend as well. So we'll see who's gearing up for their world cross team. Yeah, I think a lot of the swoosh track club are doing it. So I think a lot of big hitters are preparing for it. Hey mate, let's just quickly preview Friday Night Under Lights this weekend, or this Friday, shall I say? Obviously, a couple of big names in there: Taryn Rawlings, Emily Howard-Kearney, who's been moving very well recently. Emily Parker, obviously off the back of Euros. Will she run? You think making that under 23 team.
I mean, with the 3 weeks now, it's not bad. It's not bad prep, is it?
Well, and I've got to admit, actually, when you look at the course in 3 weeks' time, it's basically a road 5K for these under 23. The distance is the same. By the way, the senior men and senior women 7.4K, I think, or 7.3K at Eurocross. Terrible. 7 point. World Cross is 10K. Euro 7.3K.
And we want to bring back the 12K, don't we, mate?
We do. Anyway, get back to these women. Emily Parker, Megan Davies, Charlotte Dannett, Holly Dixon. I was surprised Holly Dixon didn't go for the long course, actually, just to be like, see what I can do. Yeah, Holly Parker's in there. She's run well at Battersea before. Vlogs run well. Yeah, they're your elite women. On your men's side, Cam Allen, just missing out. Aggressive in Liverpool. We know he can do a job over 5K. Was he 13:30, man? Henry McCluckey back. He's won Battersea before. Joe Wigfield, Sam Charlton, Finn Profit. Again, another under 23 who could prepare nicely. Sam Charrick's in there. Interesting to see what he might do. And also, mate, a few late additions: George Wheeler, Jack Kavanagh, and Charlie Brisley. George Wheeler, mate, did just missing out. Spoke to the Wheelers after, scratching their heads as another year goes by without them.
Back to the drawing board for those two. No, it's one of the things. I think they obviously we spoke to him recently, but like they've made a smart move moving to him. But I don't think you can expect to move to a coach and then make a team straight away without a bit of adjustment and things like that. So.
Well, I think also it just shows that conversion from, and this is what bugs me about the selection policies that BA put out, especially regarding the World Cross, is like, they have these track times and road times, which they think translate to, and it's like, does it though? Because, you've got Manthorpe and Wheeler who both come off a 61.30 odd in the half marathon, and they can't translate that to an 8K cross country.
Yeah.
And I know the timing probably isn't great. It was only, 4 weeks ago they did that.
Yeah, maybe that's their choice though. This is what.
No, that is their choice. That is their choice. Yeah. Do they want to? Yeah. Do they want to run 61.30 or do they want to make a team? But that was 4 weeks ago. So you'd like to think they could transfer that half marathon form to a good cross, but it doesn't work like that. And I think it's. And also, BA say about the World Cross, but, you look at the European distance running scene. I mean, look at the World Champs. I mean, Europeans dominated the distance podiums. Like, Battacletti, arguably best runner in the world, bar the insane human beings of Kipyegon and Chebet. Gressier wins 10. Armgren, Isaac Kimeli. Type animals. So, I'd argue the European cross is, maybe it doesn't quite have the depth for the World Cross, but at the pointy end, you're racing against people who, Jacobin Brisbane, you're racing against people who aren't very different to who'd be at the pointy end of a World Cross. Anyway, Kip Limo's announced he's doing the World Cross on the 10th of Jan. But I think that's this week's episode, mate. Or the Liverpool wrap up, done and dusted, and we'll see this weekend who's on that team. Meanwhile, go and enjoy the Kean McPhillips episode, because he gets into the nits and gritty of 800 meter running. Very, very good episode.
Oh, he absolutely does. Like, if you want to be inspired by some speed training as opposed to all this cross country talk and all this mileage talk, then yeah, listen to Kean's episode. And I think the biggest thing for me was how open he was to talking about the details, rather than, we speak to a lot of athletes and when we ask them, why do you think you're so good? And they say, I've been consistent for a while and it's kind of just happened. Now, this guy really spoke about, no, I did this test and I did this test and I'm still learning how to do it and I don't really understand it fully yet, but my coach has been helping me and we've done this and it has helped me move from A to B or wherever, right? And that was nice to hear. It was refreshing to hear someone who's really talked through, no, this is what I've done to get where I am and this is what I'm doing to make sure that next time I'm not fourth, I'm actually on that podium. So yeah, that was refreshing, mate, I thought.
Yeah, and it's, you look at the resource that he's had to call upon and he's had to utilize. Sometimes it does put into perspective how, I guess, the different playing fields, and also the different approaches though, because I think, despite him going into huge detail about, what he is doing and what he is focusing on, I think it is also worth acknowledging that, not every 800 meter runner in the world is doing that. And that is not the only way to become a good 800 runner. The opposite end of the spectrum, it's, you got Wanyoni. Who's doing just a classic, like ripping hill reps, just genetically gifted and just a beast. And, and Aerop again, different kettle of fish. Max Bergen probably, trains very differently. So I think the 800 is one of those events where you need to find out where your weaknesses are, because weaknesses are very, very different. From athlete to athlete, and work on them whilst also working on what you're bloody good at as well. So, and I think that's why a lot of people say when we spoke to Emmett, he said it's one of the hardest events to coach.
Yeah, man. I think what you said there about, it's not, yes, Kean McPhillips is extremely lucky that he's got these things available to him, but there's athletes that are out there who have these things available, but they're not utilizing them and they're not spending the time to understand what these resources can do for them. And you can sit there and be like, oh, well, if I had X, Y, Z, I'd be amazing as well. But no. He's still going out there and he's still running, he's still doing the training and he's still spending hours and hours and hours making sure he leaves no stone unturned. And that is something to be admired in itself.
I'm going to be intrigued how he does operate next year, because I always think he's had an amazing year, and sometimes it's like, well, if you can just go back and do that again, chances are you're going to be 0.3, 0.4 of a second quicker. If he's 0.4 of a second quicker, he's running 140, 1.6. Like, and so, but obviously, you look at it and he goes, he's like, I can change this, and this, and I'm going to be doing this, and this. But it doesn't always work like that. I do think the amount of time he spent cross training has to count for something.
Yeah. But look, we'll let you guys listen to the episode and come to your own conclusion. But yeah, thanks for listening to us. Liverpool's a blast as always. Catch you guys very, very soon.